August 2022, a single piece of art sent a shockwave through the creative world, not for its content, but for its origin. When Jason Allen's Theatopera Spatial won first prize in the digital arts category at the Colorado State Fair, the ensuing controversy had little to do with the artwork's stunning dreamlike quality. The firestorm ignited because Allen hadn't used a brush or a stylus, but an AI image generator called Midjourney. This one event crystallized a debate that had been simmering beneath the surface of our rapidly advancing technological landscape. What does it mean to be an artist in the age of artificial intelligence? The blue ribbon awarded to a machine-generated image did more than just challenge the judge's criteria. It threw into question centuries of legal and philosophical tradition built around the concept of human creation. Suddenly, abstract anxieties about AI became concrete. If a machine could produce award-winning art, who was the artist? The human who wrote the prompt, or the algorithm that synthesized the image? This question spirals into a host of others that touch every corner of our culture. From the commercial photographer whose livelihood is threatened by stock photo generators, to the novelist grappling with the ethics of AI-assisted writing, to the very definition of plagiarism in an academic setting. In this week's episode of AI Ascent with Dr. Jonathan Luckett, we deep dive into that blue ribbon black box. We will unpack the explosive intersection of technology, law, and culture to understand the battle for ownership in the age of AI. We'll explore the historical foundations of copyright, from the invention of the printing press to the now famous monkey selfie case, to understand why the concept of human authorship has been so central to our legal framework. We will then dissect the inner workings of generative AI, demystifying how these powerful pattern-matching machines are trained and how they generate novel content, blurring the line between a simple tool and a creative collaborator. Finally, we will examine the landmark legal battles currently being fought by artists, authors, and major corporations as they grapple with the fallout of this new creative paradigm, forcing us all to confront a fundamental question. In a world where machines can create, what do we truly value about human creativity? Are you ready to ascend? Let's go.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, break them down, and really try to get to the heart of what you need to know.
And today, we're wading into something. Well, it's pretty explosive, isn't it?
It really is. Right at the intersection of tech, law, culture, ethics. The big question, who owns AI art?
Yeah, it's shot up the list, hasn't it? Probably one of the most pressing legal and cultural questions we have right now.
Definitely. So this deep dive, it's really about what happens when machines start creating things that genuinely inspire people.
Right, and why asking who owns it just throws a wrench into centuries of intellectual property law. It challenges everything.
Okay, so let's ground this. We've got a pile of sources here. Court filings, academic takes, industry reports, but honestly, so much of it traces back to one specific event, August 2022, Colorado State Fair.
Ah, yes, the Jason Allen incident, or maybe incident isn't the right word, the provocation, perhaps?
Provocation is good. So Jason Allen submits this piece, Theatopera Spatial.
And it's stunning, right? Really detailed, dreamlike. Critics said it looked like something out of, an art history book. He enters it in the fine arts category.
The traditional fine arts category. And he wins. Blue ribbon, $300.
But here's the kicker. The thing that lit the fuse.
He didn't use a paintbrush or a pencil or clay.
Nope. He used Midjourney, an AI system.
Now, he put in the work weeks refining prompts, apparently generated over 900 variations to get that image. He used Photoshop afterwards.
Yeah.
But the actual image generation, all machine.
And the reaction was instantaneous and completely split.
Yeah, you had the cheater crowd saying it devalues skill, human effort, the whole artistic process.
And then the other side saying, hold on, this is a new medium. Allen provided the vision, the direction, the curation. That's the human element.
So that one blue ribbon immediately set up the core conflict we're digging into today. If a machine creates something that human judges deem prizeworthy, what does creative even mean anymore?
And crucially, who gets the rights? Who owns that image?
Our mission today, then, is to unpack that tension for you, because This isn't just about fine art competitions.
No, not at all. This touches everyone. Commercial photographers seeing their stock photo income threatened.
Students wondering what plagiarism means when you can generate an essay. Novelists looking over their shoulder at AI-generated fiction. Museum curators.
It's huge. We're basically exploring why this idea of machine creation forces us to question this really fundamental human-centric idea of ownership that we've relied on, well, since the printing press, basically.
Okay, so to really get why AI is such a shakeup, we need that historical perspective. You mentioned the printing press. We're talking Gutenberg, 1400s.
Exactly. That's the inflection point. Before that, making a copy of a book was incredibly laborious. Months of work, by hand. Each copy was almost unique.
But the press changes everything. Suddenly, you can reproduce works easily, cheaply, at scale. Knowledge spreads like wildfire.
Which is great for society, but terrible for the original author, right? Anyone could just print your book and sell it.
So copyright emerges from that need to protect the human creator.
Precisely. It was about incentivizing human creativity. Give the author a temporary monopoly on their expression, the specific words, the specific images, so they can benefit from their labor. It established this core idea: ideas, once expressed through human effort, become a form of property.
And the U.S. really baked this into its DNA, didn't it? The Constitution itself.
Article 1, Section 8 empowers Congress to protect the writings of authors. Notice the wording: authors, writings. Very human-centric language.
Not algorithms or processes.
Right. And over the next few centuries, the courts refined this. 3 key pillars for copyright protection emerged, certainly in the U.S. and most Western systems.
Okay, what are they?
First, originality. The work can't just be a copy of something that already exists. It needs to originate from the author.
Makes sense. Second.
Minimal creativity. There has to be a spark of human intellectual effort. The creative choices can't be totally mechanical or obvious. Just a little bit of human ingenuity.
Okay. Originality, minimal creativity. And the third one is the big one for us today.
Human authorship. Absolutely crucial. The creator, the author, must be a human being. Our sources, the case law, it's all crystal clear on this point, has been for ages.
And this framework, it held up pretty well against earlier challenges, right? Things that weren't quite traditional human creation.
Oh, yeah. It led to some pretty famous, almost funny court cases. The classic is the monkey selfie from 2011.
Ah, Naruto the macaque. I remember this. Grabs a photographer's camera in Indonesia, snaps a few selfies. Pretty good ones, too.
They were great. And PETA, the animal rights group, actually sued on narrator's behalf. They argued the monkey pushed the button, the monkey's the author, the monkey owns the copyright.
How that fair?
The courts shut it down, flatly. They reaffirmed copyright protects human expression, requires a human author. Animals, however clever, can't hold copyright under U.S. law. No mechanism for it.
So even if the animal initiated the action, no dice.
No dice. And it's similar for things created purely by chance or by mechanical processes. Think about that 1991 case involving telephone directories.
Right, Feist Publications v. Rural Telephone Service.
Yeah.
The phone book case.
Exactly. The court said, look, compiling a phone book takes effort, sure, sweat of the brow, but arranging names alphabetically, that's not creative effort. It's mechanical, obvious. It lacks that minimal spark of human creativity.
So just putting in effort isn't enough. It has to be creative effort.
That's the distinction. So for hundreds of years, the line felt really clear, didn't it? Humans create. Machines execute human instructions. A printing press, they're just tools. Sophisticated tools, maybe, but tools nonetheless.
The AI, it messes with that neat division.
Completely, because it's not just executing in the same way. It's synthesizing, interpreting patterns, generating novel combinations, often without a human dictating every single step, every pixel.
It feels like it's doing some of the creative work itself.
That's the challenge. It's performing actions, choosing compositions, blending styles that historically, legally, were the exclusive domain of the human author. And that throws that human-centric foundation into serious doubt.
Okay, so let's demystify this AI a bit. How does it actually do that? How does it blur the lines so effectively? Our sources describe generative AI less like a thinking mind and more like a superpowered pattern machine.
That's a great way to put it. An extraordinarily powerful pattern recognition and synthesis machine. Imagine showing someone like every painting ever created instantly. That's kind of the scale we're talking about for its education.
So it starts with training, feeding it data.
Astronomical amounts of data. We're talking billions of images paired with text descriptions, museum collections, stock photos, stuff scraped from social media, art from every culture imaginable, everything.
Okay, and here's the crucial point, especially for the lawsuits we'll get into. It doesn't just save these pictures like a giant hard drive, right?
No, absolutely not. It's not a database of images. It builds a mathematical model, a really complex one. It learns the statistical relationships, the connections between words and visual elements. It figures out the grammar of images.
So it learns this kind of brushstroke often appears in Van Gogh paintings of landscapes, or these colors often signify sadness in portraits.
Exactly. It captures those patterns, those correlations mathematically, not by storing the Van Gogh painting itself.
Okay, so that's the training. Then comes generation. What happens when I type in a prompt, like a cat astronaut riding a unicorn on the moon?
So the AI takes your prompt and uses its mathematical model to predict what pixel should come next. It's not copying a specific cat or unicorn picture it saw. It's generating pixels based on the learned patterns associated with cat, astronaut, unicorn, moon.
So it's like incredibly sophisticated autocomplete, but for images.
That's a fantastic analogy. Intelligent autocomplete. It takes your high-level concept and makes countless tiny decisions, texture, lighting, pose, background, based on the patterns it learned.
And there's an element of randomness built in too, right? Which is why you get different results from the same prompt.
Right. Controlled randomness. It introduces variations, prevents it from just spitting out the single most likely image every time. That randomness is key to getting surprising, sometimes genuinely novel feeling results.
Which brings us right back to the legal headache. Is this AI a tool, like Photoshop, or is it more like a co-creator?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? A traditional tool like your camera does exactly what you tell it. You choose the angle, the focus, the shutter speed, direct input, direct output.
But with Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion, I'd give it a phrase, maybe a lonely robot watching a sunset. I'm providing the theme, the mood.
But the AI makes thousands, maybe millions of micro decisions about how to implement that. The robot's design, its posture, the exact colors of the sunset, the composition, it's synthesizing those based on its training data, not just following your explicit instructions for every detail.
It feels like I'm directing, but it's doing the actual painting.
Which complicates things immensely, especially because of the black box problem.
Meaning we can't easily see how it made those decisions.
Exactly. The internal process, the way it weighs billions of parameters to arrive at that specific image, it's largely opaque, even to the developers sometimes. We can't easily trace the why behind its choices.
And how does that obscurity mess with the legal side, with proving authorship?
It makes it incredibly difficult. Copyright law often hinges on proving intent and originality. If an AI spits out something that looks suspiciously like an existing artwork, well, how do you prove infringement?
Right. A human artist would have influences, sketches, a process to explain.
But with the AI, was it intentional copying? Unlikely it doesn't have intent. Was it just a statistical probability because of the training data? Was it a coincidence? Because we can't peer inside that black box easily, it's hard to distinguish between those possibilities.
Which sounds like a pretty good defense if you're an AI company accused of copying.
It creates a significant hurdle for traditional copyright litigation, which often relies on showing access to the original work and substantial similarity, implying copying. The AI's opaque process muddies those waters significantly.
Okay, so this blurring, this black box, it didn't stay theoretical for long. It went straight to the courts. Several key cases are trying to draw these lines right now. The first one, maybe the most direct challenge, was the Thaler test.
Right, Dr. Stephen Thaler, an AI researcher who really wanted to push the boundaries, he created an AI system he called the creativity machine.
And he tried to register a copyright for an artwork generated by it, listing the machine itself as the author?
He did. The work was called A Recent Entrance to Paradise. His argument was basically philosophical. Look, copyright is supposed to encourage creations that benefit society. If a machine can create such works, why shouldn't we protect that creativity, regardless of whether it's carbon-based or silicon-based?
Bold move. How did the U.S. Copyright Office respond?
They rejected it, flat out. Said copyright requires a human author.
And Thaler didn't stop there, did he?
Nope, he took it to federal court. But in 2023, the judge sided firmly with the Copyright Office. The ruling was unambiguous. Under current U.S. law, derived from the Constitution, the author must be human. End of story, for now.
So the attempt to give copyright to the AI failed. But at the same time, human artists were launching their own fight.
Absolutely. While Thaler was fighting for AI rights, artists were fighting against how AI companies were using their work. This leads us to that major class action lawsuit. Sarah Anderson, Kelly McKernan, Carl Ortiz, visual artists, suing Stability AI, Midjourney, and DeviantArt. That started early 2023.
And their claim is fundamentally different. It's not about who owns the AI output, it's about the input, right? The training data.
Exactly. They're arguing these AI systems were trained on literally millions of copyrighted images, their life's work, without permission, without compensation, and that this training process itself constitutes massive copyright infringement.
They're saying the AI models are essentially gigantic derivative works built illegally on their creativity and now used commercially to compete against them.
Precisely. And the economic harm argument is central. If Midjourney can instantly generate an image in my unique style, potentially taking work away from me, and it learned that style by scraping my art without paying me, that's the core injury they're alleging.
There was a significant development in that case recently, wasn't there? Judge Oreck's decision.
Yes, August 12th. The judge allowed the core claims against the main AI companies to proceed to discovery. That was seen as a big win for the artists. It means the companies will likely have to reveal more about their training data and processes. The trial itself is tentatively set for September 2026.
So the curtain might get pulled back on that black box a bit.
Hopefully. And it's not just visual artists. The music industry is worried, too.
Right. You mentioned the RIAA lawsuit, June 2024.
Yeah, filed in Massachusetts. Major record labels suing AI music companies alleging mass copyright infringement based on training models on copyrighted songs. The fear is the same. AI generating music that sounds convincingly like, say, Taylor Swift or Drake without any license. That could completely upend the industry.
Okay, so artists and labels are suing. What's the main defense from the AI companies?
The big one is fair use. It's a legal doctrine in U.S. copyright law that allows limited use of copyrighted material without permission for purposes like criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research.
And the AI companies are arguing that training their models is a fair use.
Yes. Specifically, they argue it's transformative use. They make a couple of key points. First, they say training doesn't copy the works in the traditional sense. It transforms them into abstract mathematical patterns, a statistical model. The purpose is different, teaching an AI, not displaying the original art.
Okay, transform mathematical patterns. What's the second point?
Public benefit. They argue the innovations spurred by AI, which relies on this large-scale data analysis, serves the public good and outweighs any potential harm to individual copyright holders whose works were part of the training data.
But the counter-argument seems pretty strong too, doesn't it? Unlike Google Image Search, which shows you existing images, these AI tools generate new images that can directly compete with the artists whose work trained them.
That's the nub of it. Does the output substitute for the original in the marketplace? If AI art directly competes with and potentially harms the market for the human artist's work, the fair use argument gets much weaker.
And how are the courts landing on this? It sounds like it's messy.
Very messy. The rulings are fragmented, case by case. We saw Judge Chagria grant a win for Meta, tossing parts of a lawsuit by authors claiming their pirated books were used to train Meta's llama model. That seemed like a win for the training is transformative, fair use argument. But then you have the Anthropic case involving publishers suing an AI company over training data. A judge in California rejected Anthropic's bid to dismiss the case, so that's heading towards a trial in late 2025.
So, no clear consensus yet. Courts are looking really closely at the specifics. What data was used? How was it used? What does the output look like? Does it harm the market?
Exactly. It suggests we're not going to get one sweeping answer soon. It's going to be fought out case by case, technology by technology.
Which brings us back full circle almost to Jason Allen and his prize-winning AI-generated art. He kind of embodies this whole messy gray zone, doesn't he?
He really does. It's the perfect paradox. His work was good enough to win a human-judged art competition, recognized artistic merit.
But when he tried to copyright it, the U.S. Copyright Office said no. Too much AI contribution, not enough human authorship, despite his efforts.
Right. Even though he spent weeks refining prompts, went through over 900 iterations, used Photoshop for significant editing and compositing, it still wasn't human enough for full copyright protection under their current interpretation.
It really highlights this need to figure out how much human involvement is required. It's not all or nothing, is it? There's a spectrum.
Definitely. We need to think about this prompting spectrum. The level of human creative control and input varies wildly.
Okay, so let's map that out. At one end, the low involvement end.
That's your super simple, generic prompt, like typing a picture of a dog into an AI generator and just taking the first image it spits out. No editing, no real creative direction beyond the basic subject.
And the legal status there seems pretty clear, based on Thaler.
Yeah, under current U.S. guidance, that's almost certainly not getting copyright protection. The AI did all the heavy lifting. Creatively speaking, it falls closer to the machine being the author.
Okay, what about the middle ground? Moderate involvement.
Maybe you write a more specific prompt, a photorealistic image of a golden retriever catching a frisbee on a sunny beach. You might generate a few options, pick the best one, maybe do some minor cropping or color correction.
So more direction, some curation, but the AI is still making most of the aesthetic choices.
Exactly. Still a very gray area legally. The human input is clearer, but is it enough to be considered the primary author? That's debatable.
In the high end of the spectrum, this is where people like Jason Allen arguably sit.
Right. This involves really detailed, sometimes poetic or literary prompts, specifying mood, lighting, composition, artistic style. It involves iterative refinement, generating hundreds of images, tweaking parameters, feeding images back into the AI.
And often, significant post-processing work, right? Using Photoshop or other tools to combine elements from different AI generations, paint over areas, adjust colors, really crafting a final piece from the AI's output.
Yes. This is where artists are making the strongest claim for authorship. They argue they're using the AI like a very complex tool, but the final vision, the curation, the compositing, the relentless refinement that is their human creativity, and it should be protected.
People use analogies to try and capture this role, don't they? Like being a film director.
That's a common one. The director has the overall vision, guides the actors, tells the cinematographer what shots they want, works with the editor, but doesn't physically operate the camera or cut every frame. The human provides the high-level creative direction.
Is that a perfect analogy, though?
Maybe not entirely. Others compare it to commissioning art. You tell an artist what you want, maybe provide sketches, but they do the actual execution.
But the difference there is the AI isn't a human collaborator with its own experiences and interpretations, is it?
Exactly. It's synthesizing patterns from millions of data points. It doesn't understand your prompt in a human way. It's matching statistical correlations. So the question remains, how much of the final artwork's soul, its creative essence, comes from the human prompt versus the AI's pattern matching abilities based on its vast training? It's tricky.
It is tricky, but what's really interesting is how professional artists are actually using these tools now. It's not just a threat, it's becoming part of the workflow for some.
Absolutely. We're seeing a few models emerge. One is AI as a creative assistant.
How does that work?
Artists use it for brainstorming, maybe generating quick mood boards to show a client, or rapidly prototyping different visual ideas before committing to creating the final piece using traditional methods, painting, digital sculpting, whatever. It speeds up the ideation phase.
Okay, so assistant. What else?
Then there's the collaborative partner model. This is closer to the high involvement end. Artists develop sophisticated prompting skills, almost like learning a new artistic language. They embrace the unexpected results the AI throws back, letting it influence their direction, but they maintain control through careful curation and significant post-processing. The AI output becomes their raw material.
Like digital clay almost.
Kind of, yeah. And some are even using AI generation as the primary art medium itself, or making art about AI, exploring its implications.
But even with these approaches, we still bump up against that fundamental originality puzzle, don't we?
We do. Copyright demands originality. Can a system trained entirely on existing human creations produce something legally original? Where's the line between the AI cleverly mimicking Van Gogh's style, which is just influence, and generating something truly novel, when both actions stem from the same pattern synthesis process?
It's hard to pin down.
Very. And practically speaking, this leads to a huge authentication challenge. As these tools get better, telling the difference between a photorealistic AI image and an actual photograph, or a sophisticated AI painting and a human one, becomes incredibly difficult.
Which creates problems for art galleries, competitions, online marketplaces, even academic integrity. How do you verify what's human-made and what's not?
It's a massive practical hurdle that the market and institutions are only just beginning to grapple with.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the U.S. legal landscape, which seems complicated and evolving, but this is a global technology. Are other countries handling it differently?
Oh, dramatically differently in some cases. We're definitely seeing a regulatory patchwork emerge, not a unified global approach, which of course creates its own set of problems for international companies.
Right. So the U.S., to recap, is sticking to its human-centric tradition.
Mostly, yes. Rooted in the Constitution, pure AI output gets no copyright. If there's human involvement, that human contribution has to be sufficiently creative, whatever that threshold ends up meaning after more court cases. It's still pretty vague.
Okay, how does that compare to, say, the European Union?
The EU is taking a much more top-down, regulatory-heavy approach with its EU AI Act. Their focus is heavily on rights and regulation.
What does that mean in practice?
It means placing significant burdens on the AI developers, things like mandatory transparency about what training data was used, which is huge for copyright holders, stronger protections for existing copyrights, and mandatory labeling of AI-generated content so people know what they're looking at.
So potentially more restrictive for developing AI, but stronger protections for creators.
That seems to be the trade-off they're making, yeah. Prioritizing creator rights and maybe cultural preservation over maximum technological flexibility.
Interesting. Now, the UK, they have a unique angle on this, don't they? Something that existed before this current AI boom.
They do. It's quite fascinating. Their Copyright Designs and Patents Act actually has a provision for computer-generated works where there's no identifiable human author.
And who gets the copyright in that situation?
The person by whom the arrangements necessary for the creation of the work are undertaken. Basically, the person or company who set up the system, invested in it, made it happen.
So potentially the AI developer or the user who commissioned the work, even if their creative input was minimal.
Potentially, yes. The advantage is it provides legal certainty. Companies know they can own the output of AI systems they invest in.
But the concern is?
The concern, from a traditional copyright perspective, is that it seems to completely detach copyright from human creativity. It shifts the focus from the creative act to the financial investment or the technical setup. Critics argue it risks making human creativity irrelevant to ownership in this context.
Wow, okay. Very different from the U.S. approach. What about Asia? Are there common themes there?
It's diverse, of course, but generally there seems to be more emphasis on finding a balance, fostering innovation, while still protecting valuable cultural industries. China, for example, seems relatively permissive. Some court decisions there have recognized copyright in AI-assisted works, provided there's evidence of human intellectual contribution through selection, arrangement, or modification. The threshold might be lower than in the U.S.
In places like Japan or South Korea, big cultural exporters.
Exactly. They're exploring things like more flexible fair use interpretations, trying to allow AI training while also developing comprehensive ethics guidelines. There's a strong focus on balancing AI development with protecting their existing cultural content industries, anime, K-pop, gaming, and so on.
So this global fragmentation, that must be a nightmare for companies operating worldwide.
It's a huge challenge. Imagine training an AI model in a country with very permissive fair use laws, maybe the UK or somewhere in Asia. Then you deploy that model or sell its outputs in the EU or the US, where the rules around training data and authorship are much stricter. You could face massive lawsuits.
It complicates everything. Licensing deals, partnerships, where you can even offer these services.
Totally, which is why you're seeing efforts towards coordination. WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, is studying this intensely, trying to find common ground. And newer international trade agreements are starting to include clauses on digital trade and data flows, attempting to bring some harmony, but it's slow going.
Okay, let's step back from the specific laws for a moment and look at the bigger picture. The ethics, the culture around this. It feels like AI creativity is forcing us to ask some really fundamental questions about what we value in art.
Absolutely. The legal framework is one thing, but the cultural and ethical implications run much deeper.
You hear this argument, the great remix debate. Humans have always borrowed, right? Shakespeare adapted old stories, jazz musicians riffed on standards, hip-hop artists sample beats. Isn't AI just the next evolution of that?
That's the argument some make, but the counter-argument focuses on the scale and the nature of the borrowing. Well, a human artist might be deeply influenced by, say, a dozen other artists they've studied consciously. An AI like Midjourney synthesizes patterns learned from millions, maybe billions of images, often unconsciously, without attribution, without understanding the context.
So it's the sheer scale, the automation, and the lack of intentionality that makes it ethically different.
For many critics, yes. Does that unprecedented scale demand new rules, especially around compensating all those original creators whose work formed the training data? That's a core ethical question.
And that tension feels particularly sharp when we talk about the living artist problem.
Oof, yeah. When an AI can generate images convincingly in the specific, unique style of a living artist, a style they might have spent decades developing.
It feels deeply personal, doesn't it? Like identity theft, almost.
It does. The ethical concerns pile up fast. There's the obvious economic harm that AI work directly competes with them. There's identity appropriation using their unique visual signature without consent. There's attribution confusion. People might mistake the AI work for theirs.
And maybe the most insidious one, devaluation.
Right. If anyone can generate an image in the style of Artist X in seconds, does that undermine the perceived value of the skill and time the actual Artist X puts into their work? Many artists feel it absolutely does.
And this problem gets magnified again when we talk about cultural appropriation at scale.
Hugely important issue. AI models trained on vast data sets containing sacred indigenous art forms or culturally specific motifs can replicate and remix them endlessly.
Stripped of their original context, potentially commercializing sacred elements, and completely bypassing any notion of community consent or benefit sharing.
Exactly. It's not just individual artists' rights. It's about protecting entire cultural heritages from being digitally plundered and trivialized.
Are communities finding ways to push back?
Some are. It's fascinating we're seeing initiatives where indigenous communities are building their own AI models, trained only on data they have approved and consented to use. They're trying to harness the tech on their own terms to preserve and share their culture appropriately.
That's incredible. So all this leads to maybe the deepest question, the human touch question. Why do we actually care if art is made by a human? What's the inherent value?
There are different philosophical takes on this. One is the process perspective.
Meaning the value isn't just in the final picture, but in how it was made.
Right. The struggle, the learning, the mistakes, the breakthroughs, the artist's lived experience and emotional journey that informs the work. That human story behind the art is part of its value. AI art, by definition, lacks that.
Okay, but what about the counter-argument, the experience perspective?
This view says, if the artwork itself evokes a powerful emotional response in the viewer, if it inspires awe or reflection or joy, does it ultimately matter whether it was the pixels arranged by a human hand or a silicon chip? Isn't the impact on the audience the most important thing?
A purely aesthetic judgment.
Pretty much. Then you have the craft perspective, which emphasizes the value of mastery, of skills honed over years, decades even. Woodworking, oil painting, sculpting. These require immense dedication and practice. AI bypasses that craft aspect almost entirely.
So if craft is devalued, does the value shift elsewhere? To the concept, the idea,
That seems to be part of the shift, yes, which ties directly into the labor question.
the fear of displacement. Are artists going to lose their jobs?
It's a huge concern, especially for commercial artists, illustrators, graphic designers. AI can now handle a lot of routine tasks, generating stock photos, creating simple illustrations, iterating on design layouts much faster and cheaper than a human can.
So the fear is that the middle tier of the commercial market might get hollowed out.
That's the worry, that AI takes over the more functional, less purely artistic commercial work, pushing human artists towards either high-concept strategy or unique fine art.
And underpinning all this is still the value redistribution problem. AI companies profiting enormously from training data created by artists who haven't been compensated.
It remains a fundamental point of contention. How do we ensure value flows back to the human creators who fueled the system?
But amidst all this anxiety, there's that fascinating finding about market behavior, the authenticity paradox.
Yeah, that Columbia Business School study is really striking. They found that while people might intellectually say AI art can be good, even superior sometimes,
When you put human-made art and AI-made art side by side and tell people which is which.
they value the human-made art significantly more, up to 62% more, according to that research.
Wow. That's not a small difference. What does that tell us?
It strongly suggests that people don't just value the final image. The provenance matters. Knowing a human being conceived it, struggled with it, put their skill and time into it, that story adds tangible monetary value in the eyes of the consumer. The human touch isn't just a philosophical concept. It's a market reality.
Which explains why we're suddenly seeing things like human-made art labels and authentication services popping up.
Exactly. It's becoming a selling point, a market differentiator. Proving human origin adds premium value in a world flooded with AI content.
Okay, so the law is playing catch-up, the tech is moving at lightning speed, the ethics are complex. Where does this realistically head? What do the solutions look like?
Well, the consensus seems to be moving towards some kind of pragmatic, tiered system for legal recognition, trying to map onto that spectrum of human involvement we talked about.
A tiered recognition system. What would that look like?
It would likely have three main categories. Tier 1, traditional, purely human-authored works. Full copyright protection, same as always.
Okay, standard.
Tier 2, human-directed AI works. This is the gray area, where a human provides substantial creative input, direction, curation, post-processing. Think high-end prompting. These works might receive some form of copyright protection, perhaps slightly more limited, acknowledging the AI's role but rewarding the human's significant creative contribution. Proving that contribution would be key.
And tier 3.
Pure AI works, generated with minimal or no meaningful human creative input, the simple prompts, the raw output. These would likely fall into the public domain. No copyright protection.
Public domain, so anyone could use them. What's the thinking there?
The idea is, if there's no human author to incentivize, there's no basis for copyright. Putting it in the public domain allows anyone, including human artists, to freely use that raw AI output as building blocks for their own, potentially copyrightable, human-directed creations. It fuels downstream creativity.
Okay, that makes sense. But this tiered system, especially compensating for training data, seems to demand new ways of handling money, too. The old models don't fit.
Not at all. We desperately need new economic models. The sheer scale of AI training breaks traditional one-to-one licensing.
So what's being proposed?
One major idea is royalty systems, modeled perhaps on how music licensing works with organizations like SCAP or BMI.
How would that apply to AI?
AI companies would pay into a collective pot, perhaps based on usage or revenue. That money would then be distributed as ongoing royalties to the artists and creators whose works were identified as being significant parts of the training data. It shifts from fighting over past infringement to creating an ongoing revenue stream.
Okay, interesting. Any other models?
Subscription models are also being explored. Some AI platforms might allocate a percentage of the subscription fees they charge users directly into a fund for compensating the artists whose data powers the platform. It creates a more direct link.
So the market itself is adapting. We see this split happening?
Definitely. Premium human creation is carving out its niche, reinforced by that 62% higher valuation. Human-made is becoming a premium label.
But at the same time, the AI art market itself is booming, right? It's not going away.
Not even close. The projections are huge. A compound annual growth rate, CAGR, estimated around 36.8% between now and 2033. The market size is expected to hit nearly $9 billion by then. It's a massive economic engine in its own right.
And we saw proof of concept for its value years ago, didn't we? At Christie's auction.
Right. The portrait of Edmund de Bellamy back in 2018, generated by an AI collective called Obvious. It sold for over $432,000. That proved early on that AI-generated art could command serious money, regardless of the authorship debates.
So this dual market, premium human, mass AI, needs infrastructure to manage it all, especially the authenticity part.
Which is driving technological solutions. We're seeing development in areas like blockchain provenance.
Using blockchain to track art creation.
Yeah, creating secure, immutable digital records that track who created what, whether human or AI or collaboration, how it's licensed, when it's transferred, building a verifiable chain of custody.
And ways to mark the images themselves.
Yes, work on AI watermarking standards. Embedding invisible digital markers into AI outputs that allow systems to automatically identify them as AI-generated, perhaps even linking back to the model used or licensing information.
Yeah, maybe, ideally, future AI systems will be built differently from the start.
That's the hope for many artists. Consent-based training. Future models train only on data that has been explicitly licensed for that purpose, with compensation mechanisms built in from the ground up. Moving away from the scrape everything first, ask questions later approach.
So what does this mean for the actual human artist trying to make a living, especially in commercial fields?
It points towards professional evolution. The reality is, AI will likely automate more routine execution tasks. Basic illustrations, generating hundreds of ad variations, simple photo retouching.
So humans need to move up the value chain.
Precisely. The human value proposition shifts towards strategy, concept development, client relationships, creative direction, and complex problem solving. Less about being the hands doing the execution, more about being the brain guiding the process. We might see roles like AI director or creative technologist become common.
So learning to collaborate with the machine guided, rather than trying to beat it at pure speed or volume.
That seems to be the emerging consensus for the future of commercial creativity. Focus on the uniquely human skills. the strategic why, the emotional connection, the original idea, not just the technical how.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, centuries of law, cutting-edge tech, huge lawsuits, global differences, ethical debates. If we try to synthesize this, what's the core takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is that the fundamental architecture of copyright, while stressed, is actually holding. It protects human creativity. But AI is forcing us to be much more precise about what that means.
So two key things seem to be solidifying, legally speaking.
Right. First, pure AI outputs with no significant human creative input belong to no one. They're public domain.
Free for anyone to use and build upon.
Second, human AI collaborative works can be protected, but ownership rests with the humans who demonstrably provided the core creative direction and meaningful input. The burden of proof is on the human.
It feels like this whole gigantic debate about who owns AI art has ironically ended up highlighting why human creativity is valuable in the first place.
I completely agree. It's forced us to articulate what makes it special. It's not just the final picture on the wall.
It's the intentionality behind it, the agency of the creator, the lived experience and perspective they bring, the cultural context they operate in, the emotional authenticity, things a machine currently simply doesn't possess.
So, far from replacing human creativity, AI might actually be triggering its elevation, a kind of renaissance of appreciation for those distinctly human qualities.
That 62% premium the market puts on human-made art seems to prove that point, doesn't it? The story, the struggle, the human touch, it genuinely matters to people.
It really does. Which makes this whole conversation about AI ownership ultimately less about technology and more about human values. What do we cherish in creation?
The art might be generated by algorithms, but the questions it forces us to ask are deeply, profoundly human.
So maybe the final provocative thought to leave you with is this. If machines can now perfectly replicate aesthetics, maybe even surpass humans in technical execution soon, then the real future value of human creativity shifts decisively.
Shifts from what to what?
From technical mastery, the skill of the hand, to meaning mastery. The power of a unique human perspective, the depth of the story being told, the intention and agency woven into the work. That's the stuff AI can't replicate. And maybe that's where the most exciting human creativity is headed next.
As we've journeyed through centuries of legal precedent, the inner workings of neural networks, and the front lines of today's courtroom battles, a surprisingly clear picture begins to emerge. The initial chaos sparked by AI-generated art is starting to coalesce into a new, more nuanced understanding of creativity. The law, for now, is holding the line. Pure machine output, devoid of significant human guidance, belongs to the public domain. Copyright, it seems, will continue to be a shield for human authorship, but the definition of author is being stretched and tested in real time. The burden of proof now falls on the human collaborator to demonstrate their creative contribution, their intent, and their vision. This shift has profound implications for every creative professional. The consensus is that AI will inevitably automate the more mechanical aspects of creative work. The endless variations, the technical polish, the sheer volume of content. The future for human artists, therefore, lies not in competing with the machine on speed or efficiency, but in ascending the value chain. The most valuable human contributions will be strategic, conceptual, and deeply personal. It's a move away from being the hands that execute, and toward being the mind that directs, the heart that feels, and the voice that tells a unique story. The emphasis is shifting from technical mastery to what we might call meaning mastery. Ultimately, the rise of AI art has ironically forced us to confront what makes human creativity so special in the first place. It's not just the final product, but the story behind it, the intention within it, and the authentic human experience that informs it. As machines become increasingly adept at replicating aesthetics, the real frontier for human creativity is not in the perfection of the image, but in the depth of the message. The provocative question this leaves us with is not whether machines will replace artists, but how this new technological landscape will inspire a renaissance of what is most irreplaceable within us. Our ability to create not just with our hands, but with our hearts and minds, and to find new ways to express the messy, beautiful, and profoundly human stories that a machine can never truly know.